To our newest segment series, Louisiana Legends. We are hanging out with Colby Hébert, the Cajun hatter, historian, traiteur, and you brought along a friend, Dr. Rachel Doherty. I'm so excited that you guys are both here because we're tackling the Rougarou today.
Yes, a big one. You know, this is probably the greatest tale, for our monsters or just kind of folklore within our swamps. I knew Rachel would be perfect for this topic because she is an historian, French doctorate as well, that also has extensively studied not only this particular topic, but all of the folklore in Louisiana and beyond, Canada, France.
That's awesome.
We'll let her take off.
For Louisiana.
And we were talking when you first got here, I told you, I'm not from here, so I'm learning all about this. And you had to learn about this too. So tell us about what you've kind of uncovered.
I'm not from here either. So I moved to Louisiana 11 years ago to go to graduate school for French. And so the reason I started looking into Rougarou legends extensively is because I discovered that pretty much everybody who's writing poetry in this area, all of the Cajuns and Creoles who are creating contemporary literature, they all write about being Lougarous or Rougarous. And I'll get into the difference in a minute. And I had to know why. Okay, why are these guys looking to this legend, this scary monster, and saying, I'm just like this? Well, as we know, a Lougarou is a werewolf. Most people have a basic idea of a Rougarou is a Louisiana werewolf because it's based on the French word for werewolf, which is loup-garou.
Okay.
So I discovered that these poets, they were dealing with a lot of inner turmoil whenever it came to their identity, being American or Cajun or Creole or mixed race, speaking two languages. So that was kind of their metaphor. But I had to know, where did these legends come from and how are they different in Louisiana than other places? Because we're a Creolized culture. So we have traditions from a bunch of different cultures. France, of course, Canada, the Caribbean, people who were brought here from Africa whenever they were enslaved, and we have indigenous traditions as well. So I wanted to know what is this? Why do some people say the loup-garou is a wolf, and for other people it's a different kind of creature, like a dog, or even something entirely different? But let's start with the word. Loup-garou, okay? So loup-garou, it means werewolf. The French word for wolf is loup, and garou is the word for were in English. But what does were mean? Well, actually, both of these words are based on an old Frankish word. So before they even spoke a Latin-based language in France, in one region they had a Frankish language where the word for man was garou, and so, or waru. So we have werewolf, loup-garou, and they have the same word origin, which is pretty cool, even though they don't sound like it. But so why do we have in Louisiana Rougarou? Well, as a lot of us know, there were periods of time in different regions in Louisiana where people who spoke French didn't actually read a lot of French. This is the same case. This case is exactly the same in other places in North America, like in Canada and in even Michigan, where there were French settlers, and people just changed the pronunciation. So you have places in Canada where they say Rougarou as well. But is it always a wolf? Well, do we have wolves in Louisiana? Do y'all know?
I mean, I don't know.
There used to be, right?
There were.
There
a
were
long time
red
ago.
wolves
Yeah,
that
long
were
time
extinct
ago.
now.
But there never was a large population. Some people say that, there were some. But usually if it's a canine, it's a monstrous dog, or even just a regular dog. It's a person who can magically shapeshift, turn into an animal. So something that you also find in France and a lot of the regions where settlers who would come to Louisiana later, they had legends about people who could shapeshift into any animal.
Okay.
This exists also in parts of Canada where French settlers went, and then of course in all the other cultures that I mentioned. The interesting thing is that sometimes they use the term loup-garou for these monsters. So in the 1960s, there was a study where people interviewed a lot of folks along Bayou La Fourche, and that's where a lot of these Rougarou legends are concentrated. They found that the definition for what is a loup-garou had so much variation that they couldn't even really say, is this a werewolf? Is this what we think of in the European folklore as something that transforms into a wolf? Well, not really, because they had examples of loup-garous transforming into cats and pigs and owls, but they also had invisible, ghostly kind of demon sort of spirits that would haunt people. And they also had completely animals that were or creatures that were a bunch of different animals mixed together. And so the reason for that is, again, just creolization. You have all of these cultures coming together, and you have different legends, you have different monsters, you have different spooky stories, and in French, the closest word or idea to that is a loup-garou.
I've learned so much, and we're out of time, but we're going to continue this conversation. We have another segment, so you guys don't want to miss it. You, my friend, you have a look at the forecast coming up.
That is right. We are seeing some beautiful weather out there right now.
Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on the Rougarou. We were just talking during the break. I mentioned Blue Dog, because isn't that painting kind of loosely referenced for the Rougarou?
Yes. So George Rodrigue, who was from New Iberia, he painted the blue dog for the very first time to illustrate a collection of ghost stories. And that was supposed to be a ghost dog or a monstrous dog. So for Rodrigue, who was from New Iberia, that's what a Rougarou was. It was a dog. It was somebody who had the ability to turn into a dog, to play tricks on people, or to scare people, or to wreak havoc. So in the legend, the only way to become a Rougarou is you have to be doing black magic, which means that you're doing something anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, you're messing with demonic forces. But yeah, for a lot of Cajuns in New Iberia, which is where Colby's from, the Rougarou is just a dog. But I've heard Cajuns in Church Point, Prairie Cajuns say that as well. It's down the bayou where you have different variations, other animals, ghosts, these monstrous creatures. But yeah, I want to know, Colby, growing up in New Iberia as a young person, these stories still existed. So what did you hear?
It's definitely like canine, dog, dog man, werewolf, wolf, something along those lines. And it was always snatching up, kids, either kind of wandering off in the swamps, in the woods, or kids who were kind of mischievous. We were talking about behind camera about that.
Yeah.
Kids not going to sleep at night, not behaving well. You heard some
You
of those
had
things.
stories too.
My grandparents, they're from all in Cajun country, Pier Part, up in the river parishes, and they would tell me stories about the Rougarou all the time, about how even if you were misbehaving and maybe he didn't come and snatch you up, he could get inside your dreams and like cause all sorts of havoc. It was all sorts of these like mystical things that they couldn't explain, but the biggest one was if you didn't stay, or if you stayed up past your bedtime, he was going to come in and grab all the naughty children and take you away down to the bayou, never to be seen again.
Right, and she was talking about demonic, and really, it is kind of like sort of this, looked at from this perspective of like an entity that's more than just some animal, but just something beyond, something, spiritual or netherworld.
Yeah.
And, what I think is the funniest about that is like, for me, I just talking about something that's my favorite aspect, is that, how do you get rid of it? One of those things is, it's apparently terrified of frogs, which is hilarious.
That you hear in like bayou country, where like terrified of frogs. In a lot of the older legends in Louisiana, they're the same as in France. You have to make it bleed. So the Rougarou will try to attack you, but what it's really doing, a lot of the encounter stories is a person out late at night, right? They're not supposed to be out. They're attacked by a dog or a wolf or a monstrous canine. And it tries to attack you in order for you to fight back. And if you make it bleed, it can then retransform into a person, and the curse is broken. So
like
there's
they're trying
a
to
catch.
break the curse.
Yes, they're trying to get back to their human form, sort of like they're really sorry that they messed with the devil and that they got themselves into this. But the catch is that if you, the person who fights the Rougarou, then goes and tells who that person is within the span of a year and a day or 101 days, it depends on who's telling the story, you yourself will become the Rougarou.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think I heard something somewhere about where it's oftentimes the person closest to you, or like someone in your immediate family too, that would be like that, and then you'd recognize it. It was like that whole aspect.
That's always in the more complex narrative structures of the legend. There's always that element too. Either you see the person transform right then and it's your neighbor, or the next day you see a person in town who has a wound on their body in the same spot where you wounded the Rougarou, and it's like the doctor who has dark secrets in town or something like that.
And alternatively, if you're a little less sympathetic and you throw some salt on it, it can literally combust into flames and sort of end it there. You know?
I didn't know that.
And they're not good counters either.
The 13 pennies.
The 13 pennies on the windowsill or
What
just
is
somewhere
that?
around the house.
What's the 13 pennies?
So they say that whenever they're in their animal form, they return to, I guess, like a less intelligent form, and they can't count very high. And so the number 13, Colby, you know about this, in a
They
lot
can only
of
count to 12.
yeah, in a lot of Christian traditions, it's some kind of, it's either a demonic number or it's a sacred number. So if you leave 13 pennies out, they can't count as high as that.
They try to count continually and continually and continually, and they end up not getting in the house because they're just sort of frustrated and caught up over this counting that they just can't get to the end of it. Never.
We have about a minute left, but are they always this dark, mischievous entity?
Usually so, yeah, but not always something that is so terrible. Except for the children's cautionary tales telling them to behave, or the Rougarou will come and get them. I mean, that's pretty scary. But a lot of times those are just the short versions. In these longer, older stories, it's more like somebody who's seeking to re-enter society, an outcast who's done something wrong, and they really just want to get back to normal.
Fun fact, you can see the Rougarou at the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans.
Can you really?
That's
They have
true.
a statue of him. And
That's
he's got
so cool.
glowing red eyes, and he's like that. It's great.
Do they always have red eyes? Is that a...
That's a common,
Okay.
that's a common
I guess
description.
demonic type.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Well,
I wanted to
fun.
mention also the Rougarou Fest that's happening in Homa, that's put on the South Louisiana Wetlands Discovery Center. They're friends of mine down there. I'm just going as a volunteer. I don't have official programming, but Colby does. He's going to give a talk.
I'll be giving a talk there at 2 o'clock on Tuesday about the trade
Yeah.
turn tradition, but we should also support our brothers and sisters down the bayou.
Yeah, absolutely. We're out of time. This discussion was awesome. Guys, stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Yeah, we have no 4 o'clock today due to baseball, so be sure to tune in at 5 and 6. Thank you both for hanging out with us.
Thanks
and
so much.
This was
sharing
so
your
fun.
knowledge. I
Thanks
learned
for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, Adam's the history
I'm so
nerd
glad
out of
that I
the
finally
two
get
of
to
us.
talk to some people.
We're native
I know.
Louisiana and
It
raised
worked
with the
out.
legends. That's great.
This was awesome. I hope you guys at home enjoyed it, maybe learned something new. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.